Imagine waking up one morning, looking at your hands, and noticing something just feels off. Maybe your fingers look a little puffier than usual. Maybe there's a strange color change or a weird tingling that wasn't there yesterday. Most people brush it off, thinking it's age, weather, or just sleeping in the wrong position. But what if I told you that some of these tiny, easy-to-ignore hand changes can appear days before a stroke or even a heart attack? What if your body is trying to warn you, and the message is showing up right in your hands long before anything serious happens? Today, I want every senior watching this to stay with me until the very end, because what I'm about to share could genuinely save your life or the life of someone you love. When you start to feel sudden weakness in one hand, or you notice that simple movements feel a little heavier, slower, or more awkward than usual, your body might be trying to communicate something far more important than just fatigue or aging. Many seniors experience small changes in the strength of their hands without realizing these changes can be the earliest signals of reduced blood flow to the brain. When blood supply begins to drop even slightly, your brain's ability to control movement becomes affected. And because your hands rely heavily on precise neurological signals, they often show the first signs of trouble long before anything dramatic occurs. You may notice that you're dropping objects you normally hold easily, or that gripping a cup, a toothbrush, or a pen suddenly requires more effort. It may feel as if your hand has a delayed reaction or gets tired unusually fast, even though the rest of your body feels normal. This isn't just weakness. It's a subtle disturbance in the communication between your brain and your muscles. One of the most important things to understand is that strokes rarely appear out of nowhere. They build up silently, sometimes days in advance, as circulation gradually becomes compromised. When a small clot begins forming, or when a blood vessel becomes narrowed, the brain receives less oxygen and fewer nutrients. Even a small reduction can affect the parts of the brain responsible for hand coordination, grip, and fine motor skills. This is why your hand may feel clumsy, shaky, or unable to perform movements with the same accuracy. You might notice your hand missing the buttons on your shirt, struggling with keys, or fumbling with your phone. These changes can be so soft and subtle that people often blame them on sleeping wrong, arthritis, or simply getting older. But aging does not cause sudden, one-sided weakness that appears unexpectedly. That's why noticing the difference between general tiredness and an abrupt change is crucial. Another key sign related to hand weakness is asymmetry, one hand behaving differently from the other. If your right hand feels weaker than your left, or vice versa, that imbalance is a major red flag. The body naturally loses strength evenly over time, not on one side. So when one hand starts acting differently, it usually means the issue is coming from the nervous system or the brain rather than the muscles themselves. You might also experience a moment where you go to pick something up and your hand just doesn't respond quickly enough. The speed and accuracy of your grip are controlled by tiny, precise signals that travel through the brain and spine. Any disruption to these signals, even a small one, can show up instantly in the hand. Sometimes, the weakness comes with a strange heaviness, like your hand is harder to lift or control. It may feel disconnected, almost as if it's not fully part of your body. This feeling is especially important to pay attention to because many stroke survivors later report that this was their first warning sign. They often say they felt something was off with their hand days before anything major happened, but they didn't think much of it. Your hand is often the earliest messenger, and when it starts signaling weakness, it's worth listening carefully. When numbness or tingling suddenly appears in one hand, especially without any clear reason, it can be one of the earliest and most important warnings your body gives before a stroke. Many seniors experience tingling sensations now and then, but the kind that signals trouble feels different. It often comes on unexpectedly, lingers longer than usual, and affects very specific areas of the hand or certain fingers rather than the entire arm. This happens because the nerves in your hand rely on uninterrupted blood flow from the brain to function normally. When a small clot begins forming, or when circulation starts to slow down, even slightly, the communication between your brain and your hand becomes disrupted. This disruption isn't painful, but it creates a strange electrical feeling, almost like tiny pins, buzzing, or a sudden loss of touch sensitivity. The key is that this sensation doesn't feel familiar and doesn't have an obvious cause like sleeping on your arm or leaning on your hand for too long. What makes this warning tricky is that many people often blame numbness on common issues like arthritis, diabetes, or just getting older. But those conditions usually create numbness that builds slowly over time, not suddenly. When the numbness is abrupt, affects only one hand, or doesn't improve after moving or stretching, it becomes a sign that blood flow or nerve signals may be compromised. Your hands, being so far from the brain, are often the first place where reduced circulation shows up. The brain is extremely sensitive to changes in oxygen supply, and even a slight drop can trigger sensory disturbances. That tingling you feel in your fingertips or along the side of your hand could be the exact moment your brain is struggling to send signals the way it normally does. Another thing to pay attention to is whether the numbness spreads or moves from one part of the hand to another. For example, it may start in the fingertips, then shift toward the palm, or affect only the thumb and index finger. This pattern can reveal which part of the brain or nerve pathway is being affected. Strokes often start with minor interruptions before anything severe happens. That means the tingling might come and go, or it might feel mild one day and slightly stronger the next. These small, changing sensations are often the body's way of alerting you before a major event occurs. People who have experienced strokes often recall that something felt strange in their hand days before, but they didn't understand the significance. You might also notice that your hand feels slightly numb even when you're using it. Normally, if your hand falls asleep, movement quickly restores feeling, but numbness caused by early stroke warning signs doesn't respond that way. You might shake your hand, stretch it, or massage it, and the tingling remains. You may feel like certain textures are harder to sense, or that objects feel different in your grip. Even small changes in how your hand perceives temperature or touch can be early signs that nerve signals are being interrupted. When numbness or tingling appears abruptly, affects one hand more than the other, or feels unusual compared to anything you've experienced before, it becomes a sign worth paying serious attention to. When your fingers suddenly change color and shift from healthy pink to pale, bluish, or even a purplish tone, it's one of the clearest signs that circulation is not flowing the way it should, and this change can appear days before a heart attack. Many seniors don't realize how sensitive the fingertips are to oxygen levels in the blood. Because they're the farthest point from the heart, even a slight drop in blood flow shows up in the color of your hands long before you feel any pain or pressure in your chest. When your heart struggles to push enough oxygenated blood through your body, your fingers are among the first areas to reveal it. A bluish tint can mean the tissues aren't getting enough oxygen, and this is a major red flag for an upcoming cardiac event. If your fingers ever look unusually dark, cold, or discolored without being exposed to cold temperatures, that's your body asking you to pay very close attention. A sudden pale or washed out color in the fingertips can also be a sign that something is off with your heart or blood vessels. Before a heart attack, blood flow may be restricted due to plaque buildup or narrowing arteries. This restriction reduces oxygen supply, making the skin appear lighter than usual. Seniors often mistake this for simple aging or poor circulation from sitting too long, but heart-related color changes tend to last longer, appear suddenly, and sometimes affect only one hand. That asymmetry is what makes it a more concerning sign. Healthy hands quickly return to a normal warm pink tone after being rubbed or moved. But hands affected by poor heart function stay pale or bluish, even after movement. Another important detail to notice is if your fingers suddenly feel colder than the rest of your body and change color at the same time. Cold Discolored fingertips are often an early sign that blood isn't moving efficiently. Before a heart attack, the heart can struggle with the increased demand for oxygen, and the body compensates by sending blood to the most vital organs first. The hands, being non-essential for survival, receive less circulation. This drop in blood flow causes both the cold sensation and the color shift. Seniors may think their hands are cold simply due to weather or poor insulation, but when the temperature change comes with discoloration and occurs even in a warm room, it becomes a clear warning sign. Sometimes discoloration appears only in certain fingers or in specific areas like the tips, around the nails, or along the sides of the hand. This can indicate uneven blood flow caused by reduced heart efficiency or early artery blockages. A bluish or purple tone around the nails is especially concerning because it means oxygen levels in the blood are dropping. People often notice this when they look at their hands in natural light and realize the color doesn't look normal. Even mild discoloration can be significant if it appears suddenly or becomes more frequent over several days. Bright redness can also be linked to cardiovascular stress. When the heart is struggling, blood may pool in certain areas, causing redness that doesn't match your normal skin tone. Some seniors experience a combination of redness and swelling, which can signal inflammation in the blood vessels. If your fingers look unusually red, irritated, or warm without any injury or allergic reaction, this can be connected to early heart strain. It's not about panic, it's about awareness. Color changes are one of the body's simplest and clearest ways to show that oxygen flow is compromised. Many seniors who later experienced heart attacks recall that their fingertips looked off or slightly bluish days beforehand, but they didn't think it mattered. Heart warnings aren't always dramatic. Sometimes they're as subtle as a shift in color that stays just long enough to raise concern. Your fingers are incredibly honest. They reveal what's happening inside your body even when you feel fine. Color changes in the fingertips shouldn't be ignored, especially if they appear suddenly, last longer than usual, or come with coldness, numbness, or swelling. When your hands or fingers begin to swell unexpectedly, it's easy to assume it's something simple like too much salt, a change in weather, or maybe even arthritis acting up. But when that swelling appears suddenly, feels unusual, or continues for several days, it can be an early warning sign that your heart is under stress. Before a heart attack, the heart sometimes struggles to pump blood efficiently. When it can't keep up, fluid doesn't circulate properly and starts to collect in the extremities, especially the hands and feet. Since your hands are one of the furthest points from the heart, they respond quickly to even minor shifts in circulation. You may wake up and notice your rings feel tighter than usual or that your fingers look puffy and stiff. This kind of swelling may feel soft and squishy, or it may make your fingers feel firm and harder to bend. What's important is that it is new and unexplained, and that it doesn't go away as quickly as normal morning stiffness would. Another important thing to notice is whether the swelling gets worse throughout the day. When the heart is not pumping blood effectively, gravity pulls fluid downward, causing the hands to become more swollen as the hours go by. You may notice that everyday activities start feeling uncomfortable. Holding a pen, opening jars, or even carrying grocery bags might feel different because your fingers don't move as easily. Sometimes the swelling comes with a sense of heaviness, as if your hands feel weighted or thick. This heaviness often appears before any noticeable pain in the chest, making it a crucial early clue. Seniors often overlook these signs because they seem minor, but minor symptoms can be the body's gentle way of alerting you to something bigger. The swelling might also be accompanied by warmth or a slight change in color. When fluid builds up, it affects blood flow in the skin, causing the area to appear reddish or slightly shiny. Your skin might feel tighter than usual, and if you press your finger against the swollen area, it may leave a small indentation for a few seconds before returning to normal. This is a sign that the body is holding on to fluid, and before a heart attack, this can happen because the heart isn't strong enough to keep blood circulating properly. Some people also notice that their wrists feel more swollen, making watches or bracelets feel snug. These small details might seem irrelevant, but they are part of a larger picture of how your body reacts to cardiovascular strain. What makes this swelling particularly important is when it appears without any obvious explanation. If you didn't injure your hand, you didn't eat excessively salty food, and you haven't been standing or sitting in one position for too long, then fluid buildup deserves attention. Your body is incredibly intelligent and rarely changes without a reason. When your hands puff up in a way that isn't normal for you, it often means the heart and kidneys are struggling to manage fluid. Many seniors who later experienced heart-related emergencies recall noticing swollen hands but assuming it was something harmless. Because the swelling doesn't hurt, people tend to ignore it. But painless symptoms can be some of the most important ones. When swelling appears along with fatigue, shortness of breath, or cold hands, the warning becomes even stronger. Your hands are one of the first areas to reveal when your body's fluid balance is off. When the heart is under pressure, the signs rarely start in the chest. They start in places we overlook: our fingers, our wrists, and the subtle changes we brush aside. That's why noticing new or persistent swelling in your hands is a powerful way to stay ahead of potential heart problems. When you suddenly struggle with small hand movements that used to feel effortless, it can be one of the earliest and most overlooked signs that something isn't right in the brain. Before a stroke occurs, blood flow to certain areas of the brain may become limited because of a narrowing artery or a small clot forming. The parts of the brain that control your fine motor skills are extremely sensitive to even slight changes in oxygen supply. This means tiny movements that require precision, like buttoning a shirt, locking a necklace, writing your name, picking up coins, or threading a needle, can suddenly feel frustrating, clumsy, or strangely difficult. Many seniors think they're just having an off day, or their hands are stiff from aging. But aging does not normally cause sudden, noticeable changes in coordination. When fine motor skills decline abruptly, it often means the brain is sending weaker signals to the muscles. You may also notice your hand movements feel less accurate, like your fingers don't quite respond the way they should. For example, you might reach for something and knock it over instead. You may find yourself taking longer to dial a number, struggling to grip small objects, or dropping items out of nowhere. These are signs that your brain isn't communicating smoothly with your hand. Strokes often begin quietly, with tiny interruptions in blood flow before anything dramatic happens. These early disruptions can affect the part of the brain responsible for coordination, creating subtle changes that many people ignore. It might feel like your hand is hesitating, or like the muscles aren't listening as quickly as they used to. Even a slight delay in movement can be meaningful when it appears suddenly. Another early clue is a sudden change in handwriting. Many seniors who later experience strokes remember that their handwriting looked messy, shaky, or uneven days before the event. When blood flow to the brain becomes compromised, the fine muscles that control pen movements don't operate as smoothly. You might notice your letters come out smaller than usual, or maybe your signature doesn't look like your own. Some people feel like their hand tires too quickly while writing, forcing them to stop sooner than normal. This isn't just hand fatigue, it's a sign that the brain is struggling to coordinate the complex patterns required for writing. You might even experience a strange disconnect between what your mind wants your hand to do and what your hand actually does. It can feel like your hand is moving slightly out of sync, or like it's slower to respond to instructions. This disconnect is often one of the earliest neurological red flags. In some cases, the hand may feel almost clumsy or unreliable, making everyday tasks feel surprisingly challenging. When these changes come on suddenly, especially over the course of a day or two, they are important to recognize. Fine motor difficulty can also show up as trouble fastening jewelry, tying shoelaces, or placing small objects in precise locations. These actions require smooth communication between the brain and the nerves controlling the fingers. When that communication becomes disrupted, even slightly, it can indicate that a part of the brain is under stress. Seniors often dismiss this as simple aging, but normal aging affects both hands equally and progresses slowly, not suddenly, and not just on one side. Stroke-related disruptions tend to affect one hand more noticeably, which is a key difference. Another subtle sign is when familiar tasks start to feel mentally harder than usual. You may notice you have to concentrate more intensely just to complete a simple movement that once felt automatic. When your brain has to work harder just to guide your hand, it's a sign of reduced efficiency in the motor pathways. This extra effort may tire you out more easily or make you feel frustrated, even though the task itself hasn't changed. People who have experienced strokes often look back and recall moments when their hands felt off, but because the changes were mild and painless, they didn't treat them as warnings. But fine motor function is one of the clearest indicators of brain health. When the brain struggles, your hands reveal it first. Recognizing sudden difficulty with small tasks, new clumsiness, or changes in your ability to coordinate movements can give you precious early time to react and seek help before something more serious happens.